guys, I'm Ava and I'm here with my good friend and resident supernatural fanatic, Leah.
Hey everyone!
And this is WWM Productions. If you're new here, welcome. I hope you enjoy your stay. If you do, make sure to like and subscribe. If you are returning, thank you so much. We love having you. Now, this is predominantly a movie talk channel, but with a show as influential as Supernatural having just come to a close, we think it is only fair that we subject it to relentless judgment and criticism in ranking all 15 of its seasons. Obviously, major spoilers ahead, so if you have any intention on watching the Supernatural show through its entirety, which I highly recommend, please watch this video later after you've done so.
Supernatural began as an expected short-lived series that was only meant to last for up to 3 seasons, but it evolved into this tightly knit family that carried on for 15. It follows 2 brothers, Sam and Dean, that took on the burden of protecting humanity from forces unbeknownst to them. According to the brothers themselves, when other kids were afraid of something in their room or in their closet, their parents came in and said monsters don't exist. There's no reason to be afraid. But Sam here was given a 45. Sam and Dean were raised into this life of fighting violent and horrifying creatures for the sake of saving the world.
Now, we are both Supernatural super fans, but that unconditional love comes with some fiery opinions. For 15 years, this show has been bringing smiles and frequently tears to its fans through its many seasons. Only some of those seasons did it way better than others. That being said, let's get right into the countdown. In dead last, we have season 7. I'll give you 2 words. Penis jokes.
Alright, season 7 wasn't her personal least favorite, but also many other forces considered it to be the worst season of Supernatural. It was just all one big joke. There were very few advances in the plot that would affect the story in the long run, and it mostly consisted of filler episodes. And while these were very fun, especially with Lucifer's narration in Sam's head, I thought that was really funny. It was all around really unsatisfactory. The only great part about the season was the introduction of Charlie, a passionate nerd that added a little red-headed spice to the game. Other than her, the Leviathans were a disappointing group of antagonists.
The Leviathans themselves honestly looked like cartoons. Visually, they were kind of disappointing when compared with other happy haunts we've seen in other seasons. I get that they were trying to do something different that we'd never seen on the show before, but it just wasn't that successful. They just ended up being sort of vampires on steroids, like taste for human flesh, have to decapitate them to kill them, but they added in a few extra steps here and there.
Moving on, in 14th place is season 12.
Quick preface though, our 14th, 13th, and 12th positions were very, very close, so take these next 3 rankings with a grain of salt.
Season 12 is one that didn't thrill me. I wasn't impressed by the British men of letters and their place in the story, and as much as I do love the concept of a tech-advanced FBI that fights monsters, it's all a little too Men in Black for me. I do, however, appreciate the fact that, like, the whole idea that these otherworldly creatures don't just exist in America. In the end, I can't let go of my love for the dingy motels and takeouts. It made it raw and dirty and frankly unappealing. The way that the British Men of Letters did it, it was comfortable. The whole organization is just kind of strange to me. It's too clean for me to perceive as part of the supernatural world.
I have to be honest, season 12 is responsible for my favorite episode. The composition and emotions brought out in season 12, episode 12, Stuck in the Middle with You, really always appealed to me. Also, I loved watching dogs. Also, I loved watching Cass and Kelly prepare for Jack's birth. I mean, seeing Cass take on a fathering role was just so sweet. Season 12 is not lacking in its shining moments, of course, but when the main premise of the season, the British Men of Letters, fails to excite, we gotta rank it accordingly. And that brings us to our 13th place, which is season 13. Let me just say, Scooby Natural is not included in this low placement. Scooby Natural is on its own pedestal, alongside Fanfiction, Mystery Spot, and Ghost Facers. Sure, this season had its highlights, but they all do. We did get some major universal developments, such as the introduction of the Empty and more exploration of Apocalypse World, but still, it failed to amaze.
So I totally agree that season 13 had some really great individual moments, but we are still missing a lot of key ingredients that made the show great. For instance, we just lost Marion Crowley in the previous season, so we really depended on the members of Team Free Will to pick up the slack. Also, Jack's introduction, even though it was very surprising, and I thought the way that they brought him in that first scene was really cool, it was kind of spooky, after that, his story was less than intriguing. Sam and Dean basically just became babysitters. This season was only marginally inferior to our next edition on this list, season 15.
It is really, really disappointing that we had to put this season so far down on our list because it is the finale, and most of it was pretty good. But there are a few places where this season just really let the show down.
Season 15 was very controversial in the Supernatural fan community. First of all, I happen to appreciate the ending in general. They wrapped it up in a bow and gave the boys a bittersweet end. Even from the start, Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki agreed that the only way for the show to end is with the boys themselves. Is with their brother's death. It was nice to see the boys smile, too, in a peaceful way that reflected that they were really at peace. They were content and comfortable, finally, which they never were before. I have always kind of laughed, thinking, like, they always have so many close calls. In each of their little hunts and, like, those everyday jobs. And I thought it would be kind of funny and anticlimactic if they ended it that way, the irony. But I didn't actually want them to end it that way. A part of me always thought that the writers are gonna let the Winchesters go out in a bang. Something huge and heroic. And don't get me wrong, saving those boys was heroic. But I mean Winchester heroic. Like sacrificing themselves to save all of humanity, to defeat God or some other huge powerful force. But this one kind of did something smaller. And don't get me wrong, I'm not upset over the way that it ended. I'm not upset, but part of me wanted something more. Especially after 15 years of waiting for every episode to come every week and being emotionally damaged by some of them. The ending should have been bigger.
Now, let's address the elephant in the room, Cass. Oh man. You see, Cass has been my favorite character since season 4, but the way they handled his character in this season was just really kind of sad, because he was barely in it, and then they killed him off for what was basically just fan service. I have never been against killing off main characters. I mean, yeah, it makes me sad, but that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to evoke emotion from the audience. Sure, the way that they killed off Cass did evoke emotion from the audience, and it was a very emotional moment for both of the characters involved. But the way they did it was so upsetting and frankly kind of insulting. We knew the Empty was coming, we knew Cass was probably gonna die, we knew that he was gonna sacrifice himself, blah blah blah. But they retroactively added in a canon gay subplot, which just felt like forced fan service and was probably the worst example of bury your gays that I have ever seen. Then we come to number 11, which is season 8.
I was really impressed with the opening scene, which was also the end of season 8, where the angels fell to earth. But all in all, I wasn't a huge fan of the season. I didn't really like the plot involving Gadriel or Ezekiel one bit. I think my main issue was with how the Winchesters dealt with it, per usual, with Dean's secrecy and then the way Sam blamed Dean. And as much as I also agree that it was Dean's fault. I mean, he was the one who invited him into Sam's body and Sam couldn't do anything about it. It's also like, Dean was trying his best. Dean was at a loss here. He thought, I can bring him back. And when this angel comes up to him, even though angels have a bad rep, this one in particular, supposed Ezekiel, had a really good reputation. And that was even confirmed by Castiel, somebody that Dean really trusts. So when he was told that this angel was good, and the angel himself claimed to be saving Sam, he thought, why not? He believed this well-supported lie.
Then let's talk about Metatron. Metatron is so easy to dislike, and not in a love-to-hate kind of way that you have with Lucifer or Ruby, for instance. He just has very little charisma, and I get that that was supposed to be part of his character, but still. This season is interesting with human Cass and Dean's fight against the Mark of Cain, but it still has a few sticking points that are barring it from our top 10. And that leads us into our top 10 with number 10, season 14. A big reason that the season made the top 10 is because of its season finale. God is the villain, all hell breaks loose, Jack is dead. Wow, what a cliffhanger! Not to mention the epic soundtrack in that scene, like, oh my god, it was... We get to see soulless Jack and all the drama that comes out of that with Mary. Cass makes his big deal with the empty, and we also get Michael Dean, which is a fantastic opportunity for Jensen Ackles, Dean's actor, to show off his incredible acting chops.
I think my personal favorite aspect of the season was the twist that marks God as evil. This was such a new and crazy perspective that I have never seen before, especially because whenever you see a perception of God in anything, it's always light, it's always good. What Supernatural did was pose God's force, his energy, as good. But the character, the person that had this force, this godly force, was not. It humanizes him and elevates God's power itself. So it shows that God's power is something different than human form. It cannot take human form. God's power is above that. So other than this, I totally agree that also Jensen Ackles' performance was really unexpected. As Michael, it was also really impressive. It showed that Jensen can take on a new persona, something different than his usual character. So it was really surprising to see him go from Dean to Michael. They're very different characters. And then now, coming in at number 9 is season 11.
Season 11 introduced us to Chuck's sister, Amara, aka the Darkness. Amara was a really interesting character, and she showed us God's vulnerabilities for the first time. They're still going. Yeah, these dogs will be the death of me, I swear to God. We also get to see more of the dynamics of God's family when we see Chuck interacting with his scorned son, Lucifer. Lucifer in Cass's body brings us a whole new side of the character that we hadn't seen before, less of the Prince of Darkness and more of the hurt, abandoned son. This whole season showed us these ultra-powerful beings being vulnerable and childish and scared, which is what makes this season good.
This season definitely deserved a top 10 spot because while it isn't the most memorable one in my opinion, it was done really well, once again, in showing these magnificent, incomprehensibly powerful forces in a new perspective. It was interesting to see how the Winchesters brought themselves to the same playing field as such an almighty force.
Next, in 8th place, is Season 6.
Season 6 brought us Soulless Sam, which we weren't fully aware of until Dean was taken away from his apple pie life, which he previously mocked and secretly desired. And this became a year-long reality for Dean. And it was great to see Dean where normal people are happy to be in, but it was also really great to see him back in his natural element. Not to mention the further involvement of their extended family that the writers brought in, that introduced this internal war over their familial identity, which is great because it's not like they don't already have enough internal wars going on within themselves. How badly did they want a family again? Dean just lost his chance of having one with Lisa and Ben. They were very close to creating a family together, but it never came true, especially with Sam coming back. So he was seeking consolidation with the family that he already has. Knowing of the flaws and the danger that came with these people, he couldn't help but challenge this reunion, even though Sam really wanted to connect with his grandfather. In terms of comedic relief, though, kind of switching the subject, the French mistake put a creative twist on the plot, and the cowboys and shape-shifting babies just added that extra bit of fun that made the season well balanced.
Soulless Sam is definitely a fan favorite, especially in Clap Your Hands If You Believe. I mean, come on, he can be absolutely hilarious. This is also the first time that we get to see the full effects of somebody losing their soul, which will come into play a lot later in the show. And we also get some fun scenes with Cass and Crowley, two of my personal favorite characters. It's a good season, but it's missing a lot of the pizzazz that the seasons higher up on our list have. Overall, a solid season. Not the best, not the worst. Pretty solid.
In 7th place, we have season 10. Demon Dean raises hell in the first 3 episodes before Sam cured him to make him human again. And as the season progressed, Sam and Dean struggled to find another cure for the mark of Cain, a curse that causes Dean to be violent and have a disregard for human life. This led to the final episode, a finale that I personally find to be the greatest one ever, with the killing of Death and the arrival of the darkness. This was absolutely crazy, especially in those last moments. Dean and Sam exhibited a highly emotional state that ended the season in a perfectly memorable way. And not to mention, no one suspected Death to be killed. Death does not die. In our minds, Death is death, and that was it. So, in terms of cliffhangers, this season left me really waiting and eager for the next episode to come.
There is a part in this season, in The Prisoner, episode 22, where Dean is just this merciless, cold-blooded killer. He murders a young man as he pleads for his life, and then Dean attacks Cass for calling him out on it. It's the side that nobody ever wanted to see from Dean, and frankly, it reminds us how terrifying these boys can actually be. Even though he did this because of the mark, it is still a truly bone-chilling scene, and I think that's what stands out about this season. Then, we have number 6, Season 8. Season 8 sees Dean and Cass trapped in purgatory, and there's some great character development between the two of them there. But Dean also befriends a vampire named Benny. This contributes to the growing theme in Season 8 that maybe not all monsters are evil. Maybe there's a bit of moral gray area when it comes to saving people and hunting things.
This especially boosted my respect and admiration for the show, for the way that Supernatural surprises its audience by constantly showing a new way of looking at things. The writers explore the idea that being a monster isn't always a choice, and many innocent people were burdened by their abilities or the species. The season starts with Dean's return home from purgatory that leads into a passive-aggressively dealt with conflict between him and Sam. Dean came back and finds that Sam didn't really look for Dean. Also, when he had stopped looking for Dean, he found a girl who he fell in love with, and he kind of pursued a life with her. And that's what Dean was mad at. But it's also kind of funny considering that that's exactly what Dean did in season 6. This caused some frustration in myself, but it perfectly demonstrated the mental instability and, frankly, lively pettiness that makes Sam and Dean human.
Let's not forget, though, that this is the season where Dean kills Hitler, and that alone earns it some brownie points. Also, I think I would die for Kevin Tran. Yeah, I think so.
Now we have season 1, the one that began it all. It starts by giving just the right amount of backstory to get our attention. Overall, the writers did a really fantastic job in introducing the characters and who they are as people and their differences, especially Sam and Dean's differences, right off the bat. And as much as I love them both more than I love myself, Dean starts off the series with a really bad attitude toward women. Considering the context and the political environment of the time being 2005, that may have had feminism and did recognize the wrong actions that men commonly do, society still overlooked many other aspects, such as certain comments of some degree of sexism and prejudice. Especially rewatching that, I'm a little unsettled by it. But overall, that's just how it was back then. If I saw this now, if this was created now, I would definitely have something to say about that. So I think if anything, this leaves room and for Dean's character development throughout the years to show how his attitude toward women, again with, more women coming into the show, how it changes.
Season 1, though it may not have aged perfectly, has some of the best examples of what the show is meant to be. Two brothers hunting monsters. We don't need to worry about the fate of the entire universe, but rather the monster of the week. And some of these monsters are truly terrifying. I mean, Skin, Faith, these are some of the best and scariest episodes of the entire 15 years of the show. In 4th place is Season 3. Now, this season was written during a writer's strike, so it only ended up lasting a brief 16 episodes. Maybe if this season were longer, it would have been better, maybe it would have been worse. But some of my favorite episodes are in this season. I mean, Ghost Facers, Mystery Spot, and A Very Supernatural Christmas. Let's also not forget that this season gave us Bella, Lilith, and Ruby, 3 of the show's femme fatales, in those 16 short episodes.
I especially love these new female characters because it showed a major development in the aforementioned sexism in the show. Finally, women were not just, pieces of meat for Dean to hit on whenever they go to diners, but a force just as powerful as the boys. This whole season was really enjoyable to watch, with the different villains and the much needed comedic relief. But my favorite part was by far the last episode. While this did cause a lot of emotional agony as an audience member, it was very shocking to see this plan go horribly wrong when everyone suspected that they would get out of it. I mean, they're the Winchesters, they find their way out of everything. But no, Dean found himself in hell, which would later ignite in him character development that just really changed him, and it's beyond comprehension, honestly. It corrupts him so much later on. And finally, at the base of our top 3 is Season 2. I loved Season 2. After the sufficient introduction of the family that was offered in Season 1, Season 2 really roped us into the story.
Season 2 is still set in the undersaturated early days of the show. We see demon deals get introduced, and those demons are still a big deal. Things just start getting complicated when Yellow Eye's plan comes to fruition, and he brings together all the psychic kids for a battle royale style fight to the death. This season is really a gateway into the super complicated, high stakes fight to save the world that Supernatural becomes and that the fans love.
This season brings these cute, short-lived hunts after simple monsters that only required a quick glance in Dad's journal to figure out how to kill him, to a larger stage. Azazel plays a much bigger role here, and it becomes more daunting when the boys have to face it alone. In the first episode of the season, John dies. He sacrifices himself in order to save his son after the car accident. Now, these hunts that they have been doing for so long well, even just for season 1, they were much less of something to pass the time while they were searching for Dad, and more so a responsibility that was now their own. I also like how they incorporated certain elements of history. I think this is really when they were starting to incorporate things like that. Again, one of my favorite parts was the historical phenomenon that they brought in, the Lost Colony. And they put their own spin on the theory of what went down with the Croatoan.
For the runner-up season of this amazing show, we have season 4. Season 4 is the first time that we get world-ending stakes. The brothers are facing the actual apocalypse, and oh yeah, angels, God, the 4 horsemen, they're all real. Also, this season absolutely nails character introductions. I mean, the first time that we meet Cass is probably one of the most memorable points in the show, and the same goes for Death. We also get to meet Crowley, albeit with a few less bells and whistles. This season, in terms of characters and plot points, is probably the most important season in terms of building up the universe that we get to explore in the next 9 seasons.
Yellow Fever and Chris Angel is a douchebag also made the season a little bit lighter and easier to watch considering the incredible doom that they were about to face. Although my favorite filler episode, which I personally don't consider to be a filler episode, was the after school special. This showed the boys when they were younger, and this showed their bond when they were younger, before all that corruption. And while sure they were still facing those issues with how their father was raising them, they hadn't yet experienced the death of their father, their separations, and all these other countless tragedies that they've faced along the way.
Now finally, the best season in the entire show, in our humble opinion, is season 5.
Before we get into the happy parts of what made this season so great, let me get into the heart-wrenching and the sad. Sam had just broken the final seal, and, well, Ava and I had a discussion in this, and we both kind of agree that Dean had a hand in it as well. Overall, Sam, in his eyes, single-handedly started the apocalypse, which is a huge burden to carry, knowing that you did that, especially when it was just a mistake. And Dean's not making it better. He hadn't forgiven Sam, and he blames him. So that's gonna cause a lot of future trauma for Sam. And it opens a door for more chances for Dean to also face confusion in whether he should support his brother, or if he should just continue with this petty behavior and only delay any more future development. We now see that even more complication between the brothers and them as individuals, reminding us once again that they are just human. They're not superheroes.
This is the big conclusion to the literal apocalypse. Sam literally defeats Lucifer. I mean, how can you not love these epic stakes and its equally epic conclusion, Swan Song? There are really emotional beats like Abandon All Hope, and then there are these really funny points like changing channels. We also get to see some more of the boys' parents when they go back in time and the song remains the same. This will forever be my favorite season, and I firmly believe that this is where Supernatural peaked. Let us know what you guys thought in the comments. Do you agree with our ranking? How would you have changed things? Drop a like and comment, and make sure to check out the WWM Productions podcast, We Watch Movies. We post new videos on this channel every Sunday, and we post a new episode of the podcast every Wednesday, so subscribe to make sure you're not missing out.
Make sure you check out some more videos. Thanks for watching.
Well, thank you, Leah, for helping me out today, and thank you guys so much for watching. I hope to see you all next time. Bye!
Pause. Hopefully you're cutting all of this out because I look really stupid.